welcome back to the program. Politico has a very scary story, I guess, to people on the left, that the age gap in voting is flipping, that younger voters are preferring Trump while older voters seem to prefer Biden. Now, here he is out on the campaign trail again trying to buy votes by promising even more student loan forgiveness. Take a look.
People say to me, it's great you're helping people into college. How about all those hardworking people who grew up and had no opportunity to go to college? I get it. That's the neighborhood I come from. That's why a big part of my economic agenda is investing in all Americans, whether you attend college or not.
I guess the government's going to help everyone and not expect anyone to pay taxes. But then again, he's the only Irish kid in a Polish neighborhood where he was raised in a black church operated by Puerto Rican Jews. My next guest is the author of The End of the Alphabet, How Gen Z Could Save America, Isabel Brown. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, so what do you make of that Politico story? It seems to be scaring a lot of people on the left that young voters like Trump better.
You know, it's fascinating to me how many people are genuinely shocked by the youth conservative movement that's happening inside of Gen Z right now. But that's exactly why I decided to write my new book, The End of the Alphabet, because all I'm hearing from the mainstream media and politicians and everyone out there with positions of power in society is that Gen Z is ruining our country. They are overwhelmingly entitled, lazy, uneducated, socialistic, and leftist. But every single national poll and survey out there is proving the exact opposite. In fact, over the last several years, on a cultural basis, not only politically, Gen Z is proving ourselves to be the most conservative generation since World War II. And we're out here to try to tell the truth about that.
All right, you're going to have to old shame me here because I don't get this, okay? I see these twerpy little Twitter accounts, they're like 21-year-old twerpy guys, and they're just out there like, Biden's the greatest thing I ever seen. And I'm like, am I missing something here? Is it that conservatives have abandoned this concept, or is it they're more active somewhere else and Twitter's kind of like for old people?
I wouldn't use Twitter as the best litmus test for what's happening culturally with Gen Z. If you look at a generational breakdown of what platforms we're using, Instagram and mainly TikTok reigns supreme. In fact, 70% of the 170 million Americans active on TikTok are Gen Zers, and there's only about 70 million of us total. So that's almost every single member of our generation regularly using this platform, not just to do funny dance videos in our bathroom, but actually becoming the #1 search engine for Gen Z over Google, which I think most people aren't familiar with. But, you know, for every crazy Instagram or TikTok or even Twitter account you're seeing to support the left, largely because the Joe Biden campaign has spent tens of millions of dollars on influencer campaigning, knowing how effective that has become in modern advertising, there is a massive cultural and political movement back to the right with that pendulum shift for young conservatives. In fact, 17-year-old boys, the younger cohort of Gen Z, those who are seniors in high school, are over 70% politically conservative, the most they have been in 50 years.
I don't want to make this self-indulgent, and it's certainly unscientific. I'm Generation X. We sort of gave birth. Like, I was reading a thing how the Gen Z kids are really the kids of the upper end Generation Xers. And I got a daughter who's 14 and a half going on 27. And she sees this stuff and she thinks it's the stupidest thing she's ever seen. And I'm not pushing this on her. Right. But I see her and her friends. Again, it's not scientific, it's just my own daughter and her friends. They seem to be rejecting all this left-wing nonsense. Is it backfiring on Twitter?
Let's put some science to it, because I hear stories just like that from parents of teenagers all the time when discussing my book. You know, what does every young generation want to do historically? Rebel against the people who came before them. And it just so happens today that being radically punk rock and countercultural is to embrace timeless traditional cultural values. So to back that up, 93% of Generation Z still wants to get married in America in a time that we have the lowest marriage rate in American history. 62% of us are starting our own businesses and re-embracing entrepreneurships we already have or are in the process of becoming CEOs on day one of our career. College enrollment in leftist arts rather than liberal arts degrees is dramatically dropping because we're realizing we don't need to spend $250,000 on a degree in underwater African LGBTQ basket weaving in order to be successful after graduation. We're believing in God in greater numbers year over year in the 2020s, contrary to what everyone expected. And even on some of the smaller cultural issues that you wouldn't think are impacting conservatism or even politics in America, we're throwing away our hormonal birth control. We're deleting our dating apps. We're moving out of big cities. This cultural pendulum swing is so substantial that I think people are going to be shocked to discover our politics are changing too. You know, it was Andrew Breitbart that's famous for saying politics is downstream from culture. And if you can impact how people live their day-to-day lives, you certainly can change who sits in the Oval Office and controls Congress. And this newfound youth support for President Trump, I think, is the perfect echo of that cultural shift that's been happening.
You know, it's funny. There's also like, I was in college in the 90s. We had the leftover hippies. I couldn't stand them. We called it political correctness. That is far from what we call woke now. And just for the record, you brought up punk rock. I am the co-founder of conservativepunk.com. So when I first started in talk radio, I'd be bouncing back from bumping back from commercial break with, punk rock bands, heavy metal bands. And people were like, what are you doing? I'm like, this is the stuff I genuinely listen to. And it feels like the millennials might have taken that left-wing bait. And now it's the Gen Zers, from what you're telling me, are going, you know what? That's what you guys did. We're rebelling against that.
That's exactly correct. And most people don't think about it this way, but it really is returning to our roots as what it means to be Americans. I love asking high schoolers and college students when I speak on campus to describe the founding fathers. What's the word that comes to mind? And the answer is always old, right? And I think we get that image from our AP US history textbooks or paintings in Washington, D.C. and art galleries. But the truth is, on July 4th, 1776, our punk rock patriot founding fathers were 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. Even Thomas Jefferson, who's credited as being the mind behind most of our founding documents, was only 33 on July 4th, 1776. Contrast that with the world's most expensive nursing home that we all just watched at the State of the Union a few weeks ago. And I think we're really seeing a generational resurgence for young voices speaking truth to power.
Well, maybe the powdered wig will be the new mohawk. I have to leave it there. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll do this again. All right, coming up next, Tony Lyons is going to join me, co-founder of the American Values 2024 RFK PAC. Yes, we're going to talk that next when we come back.